Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. However you're watching, this is another episode of Conversations at the Well. And you see we have Mr. and Mrs. Brown here with us, and they are our guests today.
Oh, Lord, we agreed to.
And we will be diving into the question of, do the Browns have a new church? Ooh. So grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, kick your feet up, and come back and join us. We'll be diving into some tough questions, and we'll give you all the details later. All right, come on back. Yes, indeed. We have the Browns here, and they have given me permission to ask them questions about their journey to finding.
What was your vote? I voted no. What was your vote?
Their journey to find another church. Woo! So thank you guys. And the reason why I say thank you is because when most people find themselves in that place, they don't have anyone to talk to. They have no point of reference, because most of the time when you're in the midst of trying to decide if you want another church, it's all internal. So thank you guys for sitting here and answering questions. I appreciate it.
No, that's a really good point. I never thought about that. A lot of times somebody, usually if we're honest, somebody leaves, they get upset, they get mad, they're starting to look to another place. And I think it proposes or creates a few issues, especially in small towns.
Yes.
But yeah, excited to see where this goes, but somewhat scared at the same time.
And just so you know, I have composed a list of questions, and the Browns have not seen the questions. Nope, they're all covered up.
I was hoping they were there in your notepad.
They have not seen the questions, so they will be answering these questions off the cuff. And just so that we can keep it fair, I'm going to begin with one of you, so the other person will hear the question, and I want both of you to answer it. But just so that you're not the one that's always on the spot, I'm going to alternate.
Okay.
So, on one, Vernon, you'll begin. On another, Desiree, you will begin.
This feels like a trial in deposition.
It's a debate. It's the presidential debate.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
So, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then you can rebuttal.
Reclaiming my time.
Yes.
Y'all know I'm long-winded, so I don't know how that's going to work.
Okay, well, you'll have a moment to kind of try to get it together, because the first question is for Vernon.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes. So, Vernon, when you moved here from your, let me see here. Hold on. Yeah. Yes. When you moved here to Canton, your previous church was part of the vision. At what point did you decide that it was time to move, and do you regret the fact that you moved here for that? Yes.
You can't come out the gate swinging
Hey,
like that.
we only got an hour. Come on.
Okay.
Get to your answer.
This is your mama, so.
So first question was,
She taught you how to ask questions.
Right.
Questions
Yeah.
just like
I just expected how's your day going? But okay.
Okay. When you moved here.
Obviously your previous church was a part of the vision.
Yes.
Yes.
So, let's start with one question. Do you regret making that move?
No. I think.
And why?
I think there's two parts to the question. I think there's the part of just regular life and regular life experience. And if you ask anyone with the pulse whether they would rather live in Atlanta or Canton, they would probably say Atlanta. But I think there's a lot more that's kind of in the pot swirling around than just that. So we could certainly have stayed in Atlanta and life would have been fine. But there was also a point or a part of the decision making that we had children. Atlanta's an interesting place to raise kids. There's a lot of other things. So if you're just taking it at face value, would have much preferred to stay in Atlanta, but would you prefer to stay in Atlanta while outside of God's will? I think that was the key question or the key point. And so for us, I would rather live in a small town within God's will than a huge town that seemingly has everything, and the uncertainty of, I know I ain't supposed to be here, but I'm just being disobedient, Jonah. And figure that part out. So no, I don't regret it at all. Even in the midst of some of the most difficult times, like losing my job, I think I would have the perspective of, if I was in Atlanta, it would be easier for me to find another job.
Yeah.
But I still know I'm supposed to be here. And whether it looks like it or not, once I get done crying and screaming and being upset, you get back to the place that I know I'm supposed to be here. So God, it's your fault. Fix it. Okay. But that's after all of the crying and screaming and being upset.
Okay.
Did I answer your first question?
That did. And Desiree,
Do I regret moving
do
here?
you regret moving here? Okay.
No, and it's kind of strange, right? Because Atlanta's my hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your mom and dad are there.
Mom and dad are there. My extended family, more of my extended family is there, and it's home. But moving here was absolutely a God thing.
Okay.
And so, I'm fixing this earring because it just fell out my ear. But it was absolutely a God thing, and so I don't ever regret following after what God said. I do think that there's a lot of beautiful things here. I've adjusted quite well. I actually really like the slower pace of things. I like the school that we have our kids in now. It's a really good fit for this time in our life.
Okay.
And so no, I don't regret it. Plus we have the well. I mean, there's just been so many things that have come out of the move and our obedience to what God was doing. And so I don't regret it at all. And I know there was another part to the question. You want me to answer that part, or do you want him to answer that part first?
No, you can answer. Go, girl.
The other part was about it was about leaving the church that was part of the vision or initially. Do I regret doing that? Again, no, because I think that it is still, all of it was part of God's big plan. Like, there was very clear direction that we were to move to here. Part of it was to help to grow the church. And I think we fulfilled that. I think we did what we were supposed to do there. And when God said, okay, it's time for you to go, we left. And it wasn't a second before. If God said, no, you're supposed to still be here at the church, we would still be there. And so I left with no regrets. I think that we did what we were supposed to do. I think we poured into the ministry a lot, gave of our time, our talent, our finances, like all of the things. And so I think in hindsight and in reflection, my thing is I just wanted God to be like, well done. Like, you did what I asked you to do. And I do think that we completed that task. So I don't have any regrets leaving.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think it goes back to the way I answered the first question. I think there's how you feel personally and then how you feel as a servant of God.
Okay.
I think from the personal perspective, I think there's some regret that, like, for who I am, for what was invested in the time that you spend to try to create something, you want to see it through. And you want to see it grow, and you want to see the people who you spent time with, like the children and all of those. You want to see, like, them grow and that continue. And so from that perspective, it's like, man, like, we're just getting a good thing going, and like seeing some growth, and they were growing, like, spiritually, and how they presented themselves and how they spoke. And it was just like, you could see tangible benefits from what was happening. So I think from that perspective, like, from a heart perspective, you're like, okay. But from an obedience perspective, no different than, naturally you don't want to move from Atlanta to Canton, but you're being obedient. I think it goes the other way around too. If God says come, you come, whether you want to or not. And if God says go, you go, whether you want to or not.
Can I expand on that?
Yes.
So with that, I have my thoughts,
Okay.
and I kind of want to say my thoughts, but I feel like
This is my
I should
moment.
ask your thoughts on this one. Do you think your job was complete there? Do you think you did your job as you were supposed to?
So that's a hard question, because I think there is a job, and then there's a vision. And so to me, a job is a task. I ask you to do this. I ask you to do this. Did you do this? Did you do this well? And I think through that, there are moments of God being pleased and God saying, yes, you did that. Great. But then I also think there's the, what did we learn at Weep and Mary? The perfect will of God, like what God originally had in mind when he pulled this together. And I think from the perspective of what was created, built, and sustained, I don't think what the completed vision at our departure was the picture that he had originally in his mind. Yeah. And whether that's whether that's the reason of the change or not, who knows? But I think those two are different. So I think with everything that we were asked to do, we did that with excellence. But I think what God envisioned it being when he sent us here, I think that was different. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And I can agree with that. I think I also come from the standpoint of, I know what we did. I know
what you did last summer.
I know the context in which things were happening. And so for me, because I really did have a hard time initially when God said, when it was finally like clear, God says, I've released you, it's time for you to go. And I was like, it was a bittersweet thing. But when that happened, I guess I just had to reckon, like, okay, the things that were planted, the seeds that were planted, whether they continue as they were or they change, the seeds were there. And so I do think that, and I'm trusting that God will continue to do his work, because I feel like our job was simply to like get it started. And I trust that those kids are taken care of, trust that the other ministries that we were a part of are taken care of. But it was really out of our hands. And God was like, listen, it's mine anyway. Yeah. It was never yours. So let me handle this. That's kind of how I came from it.
Before we get back to,
I know she's like, I'm the interviewer here.
I think that's one thing that we get wrong as ministers, servers, servant leaders in the church. We make it ours, and it's like, I have to do this, or I have to support this, or I have to take care of this, or no one will. But that's God's wife.
Yeah,
like, that's just Jesus's bride.
Yeah.
And so we forsake our own responsibilities to say we're taking care of something that God told us to take care of. When it's like, no, that's God's responsibility. Just like he called you, he'll call somebody else. Just like he moves your heart, he'll move someone else's heart. And I think as servant leaders and people who just volunteer in the church, you have to make sure you keep the main thing, right, which is you are serving at the pleasure of God.
This is yesterday. I heard keeping the main thing.
Really?
Oh yeah. So that's kind of ironic.
All right, we're back in submission. Go ahead.
Okay. So Desiree, the next question is for you.
Okay.
You referenced bittersweet. So the question that I have for you is, what were some of the emotions tied to asking the question, is it time to leave the church?
There were
Just
and give us a little bit more than bittersweet.
Oh my God.
It was bittersweet.
No, bittersweet is just so generic.
There was a lot. There were a lot of emotions. And I'll be honest with you, I think at that time, there was a lot of frustration, to be honest with you. There was a lot of stuff going on that it was confusing. Some ways it felt chaotic. It felt confusing, chaotic, frustrating. Like it was a lot of that. And I'm like, God, what is going on? What, because this is not making sense to me. And I know what we've done. I know what you told us to do, but a lot of this is just, I don't get it. And I'm not like, what are you doing here? Help me, just give me a little something, or at least tell me what my role should be here. And it was kind of out of those emotions where I began to pray, like, I'm not quite sure what you still have us here for. Do you still want us here? Do you want us to go? If you want us to stay, we will ride through whatever it is that you ask us to ride through. But if you're telling us to go, I also need you to tell us like where are we going? And I had been praying about this for actually some months. Like it was a lot, so much going on. And I was sad that we were in that place. I felt just, because I cared so deeply for the people, I cared deeply for the church, I cared deeply for the ministry, I cared deeply for the pastor. I was like, it just doesn't seem like it should be going this way. And the relationships that have been built here are being impacted by some of these things that are happening. And I was really sad about that. So emotions. Mostly, there weren't a lot of positive emotions at that time.
And what does that mean, Desiree?
What is it?
What does that mean, Desiree?
It wasn't joy. It wasn't like excitement or happiness. It was just like, what is going on? Just confusion and frustration. That was and feeling feeling crazy. I felt crazy. I felt really crazy.
So let me ask you this,
Okay,
because
yes.
I want to jump in.
Yeah.
Because as you're talking, I see water in your eyes.
Yeah, it still bothers me because I guess to his point, what he was talking about, perfect will. I think that we got outside of that. Not we. I think how things were happening, decisions that were being made from a number of different ways. I think that was getting outside of the perfect will. And there was so much more that we anticipated doing. There was so much more that we wanted to do in that place. We were really, the first thought was, if we left, what would happen to the kids? Like, they've been growing, they've been doing great. What is going to happen to the children? I had other concerns for the women, but I'm like, well, they're grown ups, they'll be all right. They'll figure it out. But I was really concerned about that. And so it wasn't like we just wanted to leave. It wasn't that we didn't want to do more. It wasn't that we didn't want things to work out. It's just there was just a lot that we were contending with, and it was getting, I think, tougher to figure out what our role was at the place. And where usually it kind of felt like, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but it kind of felt like we were at this crossroads, and going straight was no longer an option. It was either you turn left or you turn right. And at that point, I think both of us were really just seeking God, like, okay, so what direction are we going here? And that's what really led to the prayer. So as far as like the emotions and the watering eyes, like I loved the people, I loved the church, I loved being there, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to serve, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to understand what role we were to play in the middle of all of the stuff that was going on. So
It still hurts.
I guess sometimes, if I think about it long enough, but I try not to think about it too much, because I also think part of my instruction was to reflect on the lessons. What did you learn from the situation? What did you gain from the situation? What seeds were planted? To think about those things, and to be able to forgive, and also to leave with joy going forward.
If there be any good, think on these things.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, there were some painful aspects, but I think generally speaking, it was what it was supposed to be. That sounds weird because I said we were outside of perfect will, but I guess when we're thinking if we're thinking of all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose, there's still good that came out of the situation. So, those were the emotions. That's what got me to the prayer. When God said you're released, it wasn't like instant relief. It was more like, wait, are you sure? Like I start questioning more. Like, I don't know. We put so much. Are you sure this is it? Like, this is it. You're just saying we're done. And I actually needed confirmation, and it came again. I said, I've released you, and I said, okay, well, I guess this is what we're doing now. So, yeah, there were a lot of emotions. I'm curious what he has to say.
Well, let me get to the emotional one. Vernon,
Yes.
the same question. What were some of your emotions that were tied to asking the question, is it time to leave?
Well, I think I never asked her, but I think we were asking the question at two different times.
Okay.
So I think I was asking the question 6 to 8 months before her.
Good.
Well, and just being because so I'm a very, not to say she's not, but I'm a very thoughtful person, and I'm a very this plus that plus that plus that. That ain't good. Like, how do we? And so as I started thinking through some of the situations, and specifically, like, I care about myself to a certain degree, but when it impacts my wife is different.
Right.
And so as I saw things happening that impacted her, that gets under my skin. That gets under my skin, and I get a little bit different when you start when it starts impacting my wife and my kids. So that led to me kind of like asking and starting to pray about the question like ahead of time, like, okay, I see these things happening. This conversation, if it leads here, God, you know that ain't gonna be good. So that's not gonna be good. So how are we gonna do this, and where does this have to go? And I don't see relief coming in this instance, and I'm not going to keep putting her in this situation. She your daughter, we're going to be obedient, but she's my wife too, and you've charged me with protecting her. And so I think that led to me asking questions a lot sooner than she did, because it wasn't about what, at that time, it wasn't about what was happening. It was about A plus B equals C, and C's not good. So we hadn't gotten to A plus B yet. A plus B came later, but just me kind of seeing that's going to be oil and water. How do we manage through that?
Well, I think the most interesting part of you guys answering this question, when Desiree answered, I saw just the hurt of having to leave her loved one. When you answered, I saw, y'all better get it right, because it ain't gonna be. What we're not gonna do is hurt her.
We come from two different sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Okay, well, bless y'all heart. Okay, because it just looks so different. I mean, especially as you continued to talk, Vernon.
Would you see the water?
It was no sensitivity. It started to get to like
that man.
That man, yeah. I mean, it was going to anger, where she was more sentimental and loving, and yours was on a different level. Okay, well, I guess.
And I think it's just who we are differently. Like for me, like I said, if it was just me, it's fine. Like it's if this is the worst life get, fine, cool. Like I shouldn't say that, but I've dealt with different stuff before. But it's like when it gets to that point,
right?
And that's when I have an issue.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus. Okay. So, Vernon, and I actually think you've already answered this question, but we're going to go in again just so that we can get a little clarity for the audience. And the question is, do you feel as though your time there was a waste?
Oh. What? Wait. Do I feel like it was a waste?
Mm-hmm. Like you wasted time.
Two sides of the coin.
Okay, give me both sides.
I think in obedience, if you find yourself making decisions based upon God's obedience, it's never a waste.
That's right.
You may not see it. Mm-hmm. You may not see how this affected that, and you may not be able to quantify it.
Yeah.
But if you are living life trying to be obedient and succeeding in being obedient to God, it's never a waste. Now, natural eyes, and I've said this before on previous podcasts, like call it arrogant, call it confident, whatever you want to call it, but I produce fruit.
Oh,
and I produce fruit. Well, let me qualify. I produce fruit when I'm fully invested. And I produce fruit when I invest the time, effort, and everything necessary. And I did that there. And to me, based upon my experience, the fruit didn't, I know what fruit looks like for me. And the fruit wasn't fruit in the way I expected it to fruit. Does that make sense?
It wasn't as fruity as the fruit should have
It
fruited.
wasn't as fruity as the fruit cake should have been.
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
And so with that, it's like, that's weird, because A plus B always equals C.
Okay.
And it didn't in that instance. And so from that perspective, it led me to a lot of like self-searching, like, okay, what went wrong here? Because this is abnormal. Every other place in my life, every other situation has been fruity, but this one has not. And I think the first thing, established or tenured people would say is that just ministry is different. Like, you just need to have a better experience of ministry. And my response to that would be, no, perhaps you just need to have a better experience of God, because God always shows up. God always produces fruit. And if he's not producing fruit in your life, in your ministry, when he says he added to their number daily, is God lying or is you?
Okay, so just one thing before we continue. Can we get another person? No.
No, but that's my expectation.
Right,
and it's not to say that it's butts in the chairs, because sometimes we lean a little bit more into that. And so I believe fruit can be the development of faith within someone's heart.
Absolutely.
I believe fruit can be the development of a minister in and of himself in his own walk. There could be nobody in the seats, but God is working on you and your gift to get you to be prepared. But I think in instances where and I use this because I'm a business, by no metric, by no measurable way, can the master come back and say, how many talents do you have after I gave you talents?
Wow.
I see if there's no way in which the master can quantify it, what's he going to do? Take it from you and give it to somebody else. But I think too often we get comfortable and just, you gave me 5, here's 3. But God is very clear that you produce fruit. And even if you don't, you get cut off, you get pruned, right?
Right.
But if you're attached to the vine, you should. So to go back to your answer, like, I think in being obedient to God, but in my just expectation of where God has placed me being invested in it, and me having faith, prayers, everything else invested in it, it did not live up to what I would expect.
So you're saying that it was wasted? Because we're on the other side of the coin now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to show that perspective that you can be disappointed. It can miss your expectations, but maturity still tells you that it wasn't wasted, because I still grew.
Gotcha.
So I guess that's a 3-sided coin. There's the obedience part. There's what I expected from a fruit perspective, but then there's also the work that was done within me. I think my gifts were cultivated. I think like teaching Sunday school and children's church and on the radio 3 times a week, like, ain't no better training to hear from God than doing that consistently for years at a time.
Actually speaking on the 4th Sunday?
Yeah, on Sundays
and
too.
then when in the midst of absence, you kind of stepped in. So
like through all of that, it's like cultivation of gifts and understanding what it looks like to be inside of a church, understanding all the nuances, dealing with the people, dealing with the leadership, understanding vision, how you can't just say we're going to do this and everybody gets behind. Like, understanding all of those things definitely added value. So it wasn't wasted. But there was fruit, but fruit in unexpected places.
Not as much fruit as you would like.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Desiree, was it wasted for you?
No.
Okay. Why?
For the reason, the end of his answer.
The beginning was crap, but then.
Well, I just feel differently, because if I have to answer the question just yes or no, it was not wasted, because gifts were, definitely cultivated. We were, we were just kind of allowed to, I don't think it would have happened in any other space. I think that, like, if we were in a space, it was a family church, so there were different dynamics that were happening there. And if we had been in another type of church that wasn't a family church, there would have been more stair stepping, more ladder climbing, but we were fast tracked. And I don't think that it was wasted because of that. We had to cultivate our gifts. I'll speak for myself. Prayer every week, leading the women's group, developing curricula, developing a budget, managing a budget for the whole church. There were some, I guess, pastoral things happening where people would come and share some of the things that they were going through, and having to go to God and be like, oh Lord, I don't know. Okay, don't let me answer it myself. Let me answer how you want me to answer. So like those kind of things, study, being in the Bible, because you can't just get up there and teach. You got to learn before you can teach. And so there were a lot of opportunities that we had there that I think it wasn't wasted. I think it was a training ground, and like it was a sink or swim situation. It was like, you're out here, let's go. And so we had to sink or swim, and we aren't sinkers, so we were swimming, and sometimes we were doggy paddling, and sometimes it felt like we were maybe about to drown, but we were still going. And I mean, the children, like just there were so many things, and also highlighted some areas that we still need to develop too. So, you know, I'm a person. I like to go off the fly. That's kind of my thing. Mm-hmm. But I realize you can't do that in every situation, because if you're trying to bring people along with you, there needs to be more of a plan. And so you have to do some more forward thinking, and you have to think about how others can be involved and all of that stuff. So I think it was all for something. I don't think it was all for nothing. Did it result in everything that we wanted it to result in? No. But if I'm looking at it from the whole perspective, it was a very good training in like just get in there and do it kind of situation. So I think it was good. I think it was I'm not wasted.
Okay. So the next question. So the first week after your last Sunday, on that Friday morning when you woke up and you didn't have the prayer call, when you didn't have to prepare a lesson for the children on Sunday, when you didn't have to study for Sunday school, that week after you knew everything was final, that was it, how did you feel in that space?
Is that me or her?
That goes to Desiree first and then to Vernon.
Okay. How did it feel? I'm trying to think back.
No longer with the women. No longer, with the ministries.
Yeah, I think good. I think at that point it was kind of relief, because everything else was building up. When God initially said you're released, it was like, okay, well, we can't just leave right now. That just doesn't seem appropriate. We need to kind of tie up some loose ends. And even in that process, thought that would happen in a different way.
You didn't just leave? You didn't just walk out?
We didn't just leave. It wasn't the moment God said you're released, and we didn't just leave. So how did you exit? That's a good question as well. Yeah. So that we got that answer probably October, I think it was. And so, you know, in discussion, it was like, okay, so what do we do? And my thing was like, God does things decently in order. We cannot just leave. That would be disruptive. That would be not okay for, I don't think, anybody involved. And if we truly care, which we did, if we truly care about the things in this church and these people that we have been in community with, we can't just disappear. That would not be okay. And so what we decided is that we would give notice, similar to how you do in a job. We actually gave
3 weeks?
It was it was over a month. It was about a month and a half, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 2. It was quite a bit of notice. I'll say that we would be leaving at the end of the year. December 31st would be our last day. And so that was to try to give time for transition, for people to fill in, to make known what we had been working on, where we were in the processes of doing those things before we would leave. But that part, that takes work and that takes effort. So it wasn't just, all right, okay, we're gone. But after it was done, it was kind of like, okay, we are done. Okay. It felt like it was right. Okay. If we had just left abruptly, it would not have felt right. But it also felt odd, because we were now in this in-between space. And I would say, I wanted to say uncovered, but that's never been the case. God always covers us. But we didn't have a place. We didn't have a home. Mm-hmm. And so it was, all right, well, I guess we start searching for our new home. And that's when we started visiting the new churches. So there has not been a Sunday that we have not been in. Well, no, there was one Sunday we didn't go to church. We had friends in town, and we didn't have a church, so we didn't know where to take them. So that was the only Sunday that we didn't go. So we've still been trying to find a place, and with the guidance that God told us that when we found a place, we would know. We would know when we found a place. So that was my experience.
So, Vernon, that first week, after you didn't have to prepare for Sunday school, you didn't have to prepare a message, you didn't have to, lead service. You just was, well, I hope you still read your Bible, but
I didn't.
You didn't read. Wow.
I was through.
Okay. Wow.
Well, no, and I think that was a really good point that she brought up. Like, preparing to leave was more work than staying.
Why do you say that? What do you mean?
Because I'm a super thoughtful, not thoughtful as in like emotional, but thoughtful as in what do I need
to get in place.
And so, we had pulled together like a budget. These are some ideas that you need to do, some things you should be looking out for in the future. Like, hey, we recommend you find replacements for these different roles. Like, it was, because that's what I would want to have.
Okay.
Like, I'm going to have my own plan and I may not use your stuff, but if you're going to leave, then like, I need your help. Like,
right.
Help me.
Right.
It's I tried to think through what I would want in that instance. Because I mean, as a pastor, people come and people go, and you're still there. Like,
right.
you're still holding your arms up and holding down the fort. So I wanted to make sure I provided just information and details and like, okay, this is the budget, this is that. You need to look out for these. You probably need to cut these things because we were good before. Cut those things. Like all of those different recommendations.
How was that received?
It's not my. I don't think it's my responsibility. Like, I think it's my responsibility to create it. And much like I just said, like, I would want it. I may never use it, may never touch it, may never look at it, but I appreciate it being done. And so in that instance, it was my job to ensure that I can look at God and say, I did everything I could to make sure that things went on.
But did that answer the question? How was it received?
It was received like anything else. Like, you take it and, keep moving. So,
okay.
Like,
did you review it and you did all of that, or did you just?
Yeah, we had. I think we had. I would send it, and honestly, it kind of. If I think about it, like over the 2 years that were there, kind of set up a cadence of at the end of each year, I would provide just my thoughts, and I would say, hey, take them, leave them. This is just what I think. From an outsider looking in, because sometimes from the pulpit, from a senior pastor's perspective, you see things a little differently than everyone else. So these are just my thoughts. And so I come up with just a cadence of sending it at the end of the year. So this was no different. I email it. I think we had 2 meetings or three meetings. The first 2 were really around, hey, are you sure this is what you want to do? Some new information that came up, and so let's go back to God and make sure. God confirmed it again. Yep, we're good. I came off wrong. But
I heard what I heard.
I heard what I heard. That's what Mike Todd said. But yeah, I mean, as far as a meeting to go over the details of it, I mean, for me, like, I thought it to be a bigger deal than it was probably taken. But, that happens a lot of times when leaders have a plan.
Right.
Like, I don't know what the leader knows. And so he may already have plans and stuff. So cool. So I thought it would be a little bit bigger of a deal, more meetings, more questions, more stuff like that. But, I mean, I'm sure all of that stuff was already taken care of. So to answer your question, did I answer your question?
You did answer my question. You did after I went back in. Okay. And so the next question, we're going to leave with Vernon. And the question is, how do you feel about your previous pastor?
What do you mean?
Well, I think it's self-explanatory. How do you feel about him? I mean,
like right now?
Just how do you feel? I mean, why are we qualifying? How do you?
I'm trying to understand what you get.
No, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just asking because here's the thing: when people leave a church, as Desiree had stated in the beginning, it is normally under adverse type of situations. Yeah. So my question is, with you guys, it seemed like you guys, got the okay from God. You went ahead and moved on it. So my question is, everything wasn't quite, obviously, the way you felt it should be. So my question is, at this point, how do you feel about your previous pastor?
I'll give you 3 different time points. Okay. So I think in the midst of preparing to leave, I think there was disappointment in that. I think it felt like, from the planning perspective, from all the work that was done, like, I don't want to say it was dismissed, but I don't think that the topic of leaving was really taken seriously until the very end. And so it was, to me, it was kind of like, man, that's a waste. Like, we have 90 some days to make sure that this is smooth, effortless, purposeful. And I feel like it was almost squandered. And so from that perspective, it's like disappointed, like, man, this should have just like, God gave us the okay. God gave us time to make sure that we, like, it didn't have to be a hard switch like that. It could have been a slow roll. Yeah, people knew, conversations about it. Everybody's on the same page, but it just didn't, it seemed like a very last minute rush thing, although it wasn't. And so I think from that perspective, in the eyes of both the people, go ahead.
And where was the breakdown?
I don't know.
Oh, you were there.
Yeah, I think that I think in what I desire.
Okay, yeah. Speak from that perspective.
In a perfect world, it would have been like, "Hey, we're leaving. Okay, well, let's talk about what you're doing and talk about how we prepare the next person to do it." And I think that was said, but then it's like, okay, I'm kind of waiting. What do you want to do? Like, how do we, like, what do you want to happen next? And us to have meetings and conversations and, look out over the congregation and say, this person is probably best. This person is probably most equipped. Let's have them come in. Let's have them teach. Let's have them get a sense of what we're doing so that they can understand what we do and then put their own spin on it and change it. So and if they want to change things, cool. It's your shop. Like, right. But there's a smoother transition for people, not here today, gone tomorrow. So I think from one perspective, I think it was our last Sunday that we told the kids.
Wait a minute, your last Sunday there?
Sunday we were there.
You didn't announce it prior?
Our last Sunday is when we told the kids.
Why?
I think from a servant leader perspective, it's important that you follow the leadership of your leaders. And so I did not feel comfortable sharing that, which I thought to be a pretty big deal, without having firm, is this okay? And so we got that okay after asking for it again for that last Sunday there. And so stuff like that. Does that make sense?
It don't make sense, but I understand what you're saying. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So,
all right.
And like I said, I think part of it too is flipping the script. Mm-hmm. I think there are situations where people leave where they have a bigger view of what they do and how they impact things than what truly is happening. And so what I mean by that is I think when some people leave the church, they want some big shindig to happen because they feel like they've been doing all of these things. And I recognize that could be how I see myself. And my departure could not have meant anything. It could have just been, okay, you're here today, we got a new person tomorrow. And so that's why I try to speak very tactfully, because I don't want to think of myself more highly than I ought to.
Right.
Yeah. So, but just if you're asking my opinion, I thought that we did enough to where it's like, oh crap, we need to make sure we have some coverage on these different things, whether it's Sunday school, Bible study, children's church, preaching every fourth Sunday, marriage ministry, finance committee, all of that stuff. I would think it need to be a bit more planned. But like I said, I don't want to be so arrogant to think that, maybe it wasn't necessary. And I think that's a choice every leader has to make. And that choice was made.
And so coming outside of the servant aspect and just being a disciple, I think is the terminology they use versus a member, but just being a disciple, how was your transition from the perspective of being a disciple under the leadership?
Say the last part again.
How was your departure? Well, I don't think it was unique to anyone's experience. I think the average person, when they leave a church, you never hear from the person, you never hear from the pastor again. And wow. I don't necessarily think that's right, but I think that's a lot of people's existence, or a lot of people's truth. And it was no different with, I don't think it was no different with us. I think she's been reached out to, but yeah, from my perspective, yeah. But that's where you received your ordination.
That's not true.
Oh.
I did get reached out to because the screens wouldn't work. So I helped with that to get that up and running. Like the audio visual system is, complicated. So I helped fix some of those things.
Okay. Yeah. Desiree?
Yes.
Answer the question. I'm through. Answer the question, baby girl. So how do you feel about your previous pastor?
Before that.
Okay.
I said I had 3. That was like then.
I was thinking about that, but I wasn't going to go back.
Was then. Okay. At the moment of departure, it was just, I think it was a relief.
Just ready to go.
Yeah, just.
Wow, that's sad.
Well, I don't know that it's sad, but I think anytime.
The house of God is sad.
Well, I think anytime that somebody's like serving and the responsibility, the heaviness of serving, whether it's making sure that I'm prepared for Sunday school and then prepared for that random question that comes out of left field from an 8-year-old. Like you have to think about those things because if you welcome questions, the question will come.
And we had amazing kids.
Yeah. And they were engaged and would ask the difficult questions. Yeah. And I had to figure out not only how to answer it biblically, but how to answer it biblically in a way that you would understand. That's not going to have you having to ask your parents hard questions later that they may not be prepared for. Absolutely. So I think there was a relief at that moment. And then at this point, it's just, I think there's no other adjective than just like nothingness.
Wow.
Like it's no feelings whatsoever. And I don't know if that's a coping mechanism or what, but it's just it was what it was. And like I think the reason for that is if I lean into how I feel about it and the disappointment that it didn't, in my opinion, reach the perfect will, or the disappointment of I haven't heard from anyone, or for disappointment of any of those things. Like I think that would lead to anger. Okay. And that's not a good place to be. Absolutely. And it's a difficult place to climb back from. Absolutely. So from my perspective, it's just, all right, whatever. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Mm-mm. Yeah, go Desiree.
I'm glad you kept talking because I didn't want to. How do I feel?
Yeah, how do you feel?
I think I have tried to not feel. Honestly, I've tried to move on.
Why? Why are you trying not to feel?
Because it hurts.
Okay.
And now I'm about to cry, and I don't want to cry. Okay. It is painful because beyond church, this is family.
Yeah.
It hurts. It hurts that it became.
Bring me one too. Thank you.
It hurts that it became like I don't even really feel that part anymore.
Yeah.
And so mostly sad, mostly disappointed. I wish things were different.
So let me ask this. So even in the space of being released by God, this emotion is still there.
Yeah. I think it's, yes, I don't think that God only puts us in situations that make us feel good. There's life that happens. There's challenges that happen and all of those things, and it doesn't always feel good. And in this particular case, this one doesn't feel good. And it's been disappointing that he reached out to me one time, but I'm not quite sure how he feels about me or about us. I don't know if he took the us leaving as personal. Like, was it a personal thing, or was this a spiritual thing? Maybe a little bit of both. I don't know how he feels about things, but it has been, I think I've only seen him once since all of this happened, and it's been three months or so. So it's just, that part hurts. How do I feel about him? I still love him very much. Care about him. Pray for him. Matter of fact, this morning, in prayer, God was giving me a list of people to pray for, and he was on that list. So I pray for him, and I pray that things are going well at the church, because I want that for the place that we spent so much time and we put so much effort into. And not just because of that, but just, I mean, it's a place of, it's a house of God. Like, you don't want things to just fail. So, sheesh, I wasn't ready for the emotions of that question, but that's how I feel.
Okay. And I think it is important here. And of course, Vernon's missing because somebody has to pay some bills. So he's on a work call. But I think that it's important that we state, you guys have been at that church for 2 years. In the midst of the 2 years, you guys have never come in late. You've always been on post. You've always been, showing a spirit of Christ when you're there. And so in the midst of that, I think my questioning for that is, so many people who find themselves in a place of having to find a new church, they have that emotion, but no one talks about it and no one sees. And I think so often, because people are not privy to that part, they move through that space differently. Whether it be the pastor, whether it be, the members, because they basically find it easier to get angry. But I love the fact that you're not angry, because when you're not angry, you allow the love that God has placed in you to abound. And I think that is where the tears come from. So I thank you for being just so real in that moment. I think that's a very important part, that if you find that you are at a place of having to change churches, your heartstrings are still there, and that's normal and that's common, and it is easier to just get mad. But if you're going to lead with Christ, you have to walk through that emotion, because understand that God will meet you there and God will help you there. And like you said, the way that God normally goes is to have you pray for that person. And so that's great. That is great. You are where you are supposed to be. So at this point, from what I'm hearing, we are going to shut it down, and we're going to do a part 2, because we're not finished yet. We still have some questions to go. So the question is, have the Browns found a new church? We wanted to get to the end of it, but because of Desiree and all of her pent-up emotions, we were not able to get to the end of it. So we will be doing a part 2, but I would be interested in, for anyone that views this post, please, if you find yourself in this position or even in another position, please post your questions in the comments. We want to hear from you, because we want to provide a safe place for you to get the answers. And even if you don't get your answers, at least a safe place where you can hear someone else's perspective, so that hopefully we can navigate this life thing together. Because when life start lifing, y'all, it ain't easy. So Desiree, you want to say anything before we go?
I think something we did not say, but I know that a lot of people have experienced this idea or this experience of church hurt.
We're going to get to that one. I do have that question, but go ahead.
Yeah, this idea of church hurt. And so I think this is not an uncommon or unfamiliar experience for a lot of people. And we've experienced it in different ways, not just in our last situation, but in previous situations as well. And so I think, but the thing that I want people to remember, that when they're going through these experiences, these are experiences that happen human to human. And humans are faulty on our best days, right? So we're not perfect. And so I don't want people to, as they're going through that experience, to begin to be angry with God.
Yes, absolutely.
Or if you are, talk to God about it. Let him help you work through those emotions. Let him heal you of those things, because it's a very real thing, and it's very common, unfortunately. So I guess I want to say that although there are a lot of emotions there, and there are a lot of questions, and there was a lot of, are you sure, God? It was like, are you sure that we should come? We should leave Atlanta to come here. But then it was like, are you sure we should leave? There was all of that stuff. The thing that remains is that I'm still actively seeking and following after whatever God is saying. And that is what helps me in so many ways. It gives me confidence. It gives me courage. It gives me peace to be able to know, like, okay, where I'm moving, how I'm moving is because God is asking me to do these different things. So I guess I wanted to leave with that, because I felt it was important enough to at least address. I didn't know we were going to talk about it in part 2. So y'all got to come back for part 2. Yeah. Continue to like, subscribe, share this podcast. Yeah, we want to hear from you. All of the things that you said. Have you been through situations where you had to change, and it may have been like great, it may have not been great, the experience, but we want to hear what you have to say. So thank you. Do you want to close this out?
No, go ahead. You're doing well.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Conversations at the Well. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.